You look at the South African economy, by its very nature, we are heavily integrated to the global economy. By way of example, if you look at the global financial crisis 2007-2008, we're one of the heavily affected countries on the African continent and we lost 2 million jobs, which demonstrates that our embeddedness to the global economy is deep. Mm-hmm. And therefore, any changes in the global economy are likely to be massive on the South African economy.
Are we likely to see a recession in the South African economy this year?
Look, it's difficult to say. As things stand at the moment, our major challenge is not that. Everybody has revised our economy downwards.
Yes.
And the rationale for the revision is largely depending on your assumption of the intensity of load shedding.
Mm-hmm. Well, one other unfortunate characteristic about the South African economy is the intensity of the power cuts. Eskom is an issue, and I've interviewed many South African policymakers over the years, and Eskom is always the one that comes up. What is your plan to deal with the Eskom situation?
We've got a kind of, I can put it, 4 pillars. The first set of issues is to improve the plant performance of Eskom. Mm-hmm. If you look at the current installed capacities, about 45,000 megawatts or so. The demand at the moment at peak level is about 32, which means if we were to improve the plant performance to that level, we would then have been dealt with load shedding. That's the first set of issues. The second set of platform is to bring new capacity, bringing in emergency procurement. The third thing which I've done in the budget is to incentivize people to go off the grid by taking solar. So in that sense, you reduce demand into the system.
Yeah.
So the fourth pillar is to deal with the criminal elements, which is corruption and crime, which are undermining the progress.
Would you say that is your priority right now?
That's priority number one, of course, because it impacts on the economy.
Now, I understand that you've recently withdrawn a proposal, but can you explain why you wanted to grant Eskom a gazette, giving them a partial exemption from the Public Finance Management Act, which would require them to disclose wasteful expenditure? Why was that put in place to begin with? I know you've withdrawn it.
Let me just tell you, our state-owned enterprises have got onerous reporting requirements. For instance, they are reporting in terms of the international reporting financial requirements. They are reporting in terms of the JSE listing requirements, none of which require irregular expenditure. All of those requirements do not require that. But the state-owned enterprises have an additional one. What we then said, which may impact on their covenants, we then said, okay, you will be exempted from reporting this irregular expenditure in the annual financial statement, but you will report them on your annual report. And on a quarterly basis, you are required to report what actions are you doing to deal with that problem. So it was not necessarily trying to hide anything.
Okay. Looking ahead, one of the benefits to the South African economy was rising commodity prices last year, but now we're beginning to see some of those tailwinds subside. Commodity prices have started to decline. How is that going to impact the outlook for this year?
Look, the interesting about commodity prices is that others go down, others perform well. South Africa, we've got a variety of these minerals, which helps us to balance that. But in general, I think we're likely to see not necessarily a major slump, but we had a commodity boom, but it's going to come up in being normalizing moving forward.
When you have conversations with your peer group and other people here at the IMF, what are they asking of you? What do they want to see out of South Africa?
Look, generally we're discussing not only South Africa, we're discussing the global challenges that are emerging: high inflation, tightening monetary policies, high debt levels, all of those issues are emerging as worrying issues in this year.
I spoke to the South African Reserve Bank governor, and obviously they're doing their job at trying to deal with inflation, hiking interest rates, and the messaging was, there are still risks to the upside on the inflation side, but that currency has two elements to it. Well, maybe three. You've got monetary policy, fiscal policy, but also capital flows inside and out. Do you feel that the government is doing their part on the fiscal side?
Look, they're facing a dilemma. And that dilemma is pushing up interest rates is likely to have an impact on consumption spending and other issues, and therefore have an impact on the performance of the economy. But on the one hand, is that if global interest rates are tightening and are going up and South Africa is not doing that, we are likely to see capital outflows. So they've got to do a balancing act in ensuring that they can still maintain deal with inflation, but at a reasonable level.